Victor Tisdall was being hailed a hero today and awarded a citation from Hunter Region Police Commander Terry Collins. In March last year, Victor was taking the rubbish out when he noticed something was amiss.
When I took some of the bags out and found this head peering at me. So he was just apprehended and locked away and recharged again.
And right after accepting his award, humble as ever, Victor was back cleaning the cells.
It's just in line of duty, you know, what you do.
Also receiving citations was Detective Sergeant David Nixon and Detective Sergeant Robert Wells, who was recognised for his work in the conviction of Catherine Mary Knight, who received a life sentence for murdering her de facto in Aberdeen last year. Meanwhile, things are slowly moving ahead in the dispute over Warramai Children's Court, with the Police Association agreeing to a so-called stay of execution.
They've agreed to allow enough time. In any negotiation, you've got to allow people time to actually do things. And so they're waiting to see the outcome of a cabinet minute that's gone up in terms of getting Treasury funds approved for juvenile justice to actually take over the transportation of juvenile offenders, which will free up police resources and allow us to concentrate on our core business of policing.
Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
Dark clouds loomed as crews carried their boats to the water. It's the third year the regatta has been staged on the 400-metre course, and Newcastle is gaining a growing reputation as a centre for rowing.
Swansby Creek is a good venue for rowing in that it gives you very close access to all parts of the course, which is fairly unusual. Most rowing events are held on rivers and it's very hard to see the beginning. You can only ever see the end of it. The only other course that I know of that you can see everything is the Olympic course.
In the heats of the men's open scull, Newcastle's Robert G had a win over Michael Cram from Hunter Valley Grammar School, and Hunter Valley Grammar's Damien Ralph had a runaway victory. In the men's novice double scull, the course steward had his flag out as the Hunter Club drifted off course towards the Endeavour crew, but Endeavour went on to take the race in a tight finish. Rain bucketed down during the women's events, with the Newcastle Rowing Club winning this women's novice fours race ahead of Hunter Valley Grammar and Hunter.
In rowing, it takes a lot of skill, a lot of technique training to be able to do it very well. In this particular course, we're running 400 metres, it takes about 40 strokes. But you have 40 very good strokes, to repeat that can be quite difficult.
Speaking from his hometown in the coalfields, the police minister had more than just ethnic gang warfare on his mind. Mr Costa was quick to add, the new task force will work on other types of gangs at trouble spots in and around Newcastle and the Hunter as well.
This special elite gang task force will be focused on gang activity across New South Wales, including the Hunter. It will be experienced detectives and it will be people that are capable of handling gangs and all of their activity.
And with the region suffering from its fair share of criminal gang activity in recent months, Mr Costa says all types will be targeted, with tough new state laws in place.
This gang task force will target gangs ranging from the ethnically based gangs right up through to the bikie gangs that are behind much of the drug distribution in this state. It is an elite task force. It is a task force of experienced detectives.
And the tough-talking Michael Costa was quick to boast he means business, promising offenders will be targeted and caught.
The gang members should assume that this special elite gang strike force will be using all measures legally at their disposal to break the back of gang activity.
Steve Mount, NBN News.
The Singleton Army camp hit the headlines 2 years ago when it received a group of Kosovar refugees. Despite some teething problems, the local people embraced the Kosovars and some have since settled in the town. Now, a suggestion that a wave of illegal immigrants from Afghanistan could be sent to Singleton is the talk of the town.
Given the experience with the Kosovars, then the community showed a fair bit of interest in helping them and it was a positive experience for Singleton. So I think definitely it would be okay and hopefully we can help them.
Not real keen on it. We don't know where they've been, what they've done, why they're here. You know, obviously some of the people are in need of help, but we've got to think about our families too.
The Mayor of Port Augusta in South Australia says she won't accept them in her town and says they should be sent to Singleton instead.
I believe that Singleton would be far more preferable because you're closer to Sydney with all of the resources. We are under-resourced.
The Mayor's saying not in my backyard, but wants this changed. But the reality is nothing's going to happen in anyone's backyard because the number of people coming into the country has dropped. There's plenty of capacity in the entire system.
If we're talking about illegal refugees, immigrants sewing up their lips and setting fire to buildings, no, Singleton community isn't equipped to handle that, and we don't want that sort of action happening on our doorsteps.
In the meantime, Singleton remains on standby. Paul Lobb, NBN News. The stunning 2-0 win was exactly what United needed in the run-up to the final series. The victory against the defending premiers away from home sends a message to other NSL clubs that United's early season form was no fluke and it will challenge for the title this season.
I think most teams realise what's sort of going on up here at Newcastle is the real deal. The amount of quality players that we have in our team, most teams now know that they're in for a torrid game against Newcastle.
The only injury concern is to Mitchell Johnson, while coaching staff are particularly happy with the performance of Peter Zakenis and the successful return of Robbie Middleby and Chris Sorosic.
The whole team played exceptionally well. They played for each other on the weekend, which is something we might not have done
for the first maybe 2 or 3 after the break that we've had at Christmas.
The win has all but stitched up a spot for United in the final 6. The team plays Adelaide at home this weekend, and victory in that match would almost guarantee it.
The quicker we can actually get into that 6, the better, and then we can concentrate on then seeing how far we can get up on the line as far as the 6 is concerned.
Colin Robinson, NBN News.
Last night, Trudy Doberman spoke of her fears that Lake Macquarie Council's LEP will cost her family millions because of zoning changes. She and her husband own the state's biggest cactus nursery at Sunshine near Morisset. They've submitted plans to subdivide one of 2 18-hectare bush blocks zoned residential located next to the nursery. But council refused. Under its new LEP, the land will be rezoned environmental.
Our whole lifetime investment, like that we've been working for the last 10, 15, 20 years, has now just been rendered worthless.
Trudy says council's environmental concerns are contradictory because land it owns right next door with the same habitat has been zoned residential.
The council land that may have the residential zone is not necessarily or will be developed for residential purposes. It adjoins council-owned land which is zoned for open space community land.
The family says what's even more laughable is that as recently as 5 years ago, council asked them to bulldoze the land because it's surrounded by homes and was seen as a fire danger. Michael Chamberlain, another guest speaker last night, says the family are among hundreds who'll lose out.
The LMCC planners have their eyes on a further 24,000 hectares of privately zoned rural land to be rezoned environmental protection without any compensation to the owners.
Developers claim the plan discriminates against small business.
Instead, we're going in our LEP more towards pandering to the requirements and commercial interests of the national and multinational companies at the expense of local business.
These meetings are very well scripted and there's a whole lot of emotional rhetoric about crushing people's rights, but the things being said simply aren't true, and I have to wonder whether some of them have actually read the document.
Public submissions will be accepted until the 15th of this month. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
The last 12 months have been something of a rollercoaster ride for the hunter economy. The first half of 2001 saw jobs lost, with profits, spending and investment all down. But things have since picked up again.
Investment spending in the form of new housing is going to continue, business investment is going to continue, and consumers are feeling fairly confident according to our surveys, and they're going to keep spending.
While the region's employment figures aren't ideal, they are predicted to improve in 2002. Meanwhile, it's been revealed between January and August last year, a massive 30,000 jobs were lost in the Hunter. The unemployment rate now is steady at 10%, 4 percentage points above the state average. And there's been a drop in demand for coal exports due to a slowing US economy and a recession in Japan. The Hunter Valley Research Foundation is hoping for a turnaround.
Now in the second half, housing demand almost certainly will fall off, and we're going to need something to replace it. Now that really needs to be exports, so we're looking to see a recovery in world demand in the second half of this year.
Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
Michael Costa today met with officers from Newcastle, Wallsend and Waratah as part of a statewide campaign to touch base and hear their concerns.
There's been a number of issues that have been raised to do with location of police stations, right through to the sorts of issues I hear all over the state to do with police promotion and training.
Mr Costa also visited the new $5 million Waratah police station, presently under construction.
Waratah Police Station will be finished in May. That's the anticipated completion date. That will house the Waratah Local Area Command, which is 120 sworn officers.
Waratah was to become one of the state's first super stations, with Newcastle to be turned into a shopfront. But the minister killed off the plan in November last year amid public outcry. Today, though, he hinted that some local police may be stripped of management or specialised positions in a bid to integrate duties and put more officers on the streets.
I'm going to speak to the local area commanders about how we can get some economies of scale to ensure that we have increased visible police presence. But any proposal to have a super LAC is dead.
The minister also reiterated his support for Newcastle Police, protesting over dangerous conditions in a holding yard and cells. He inspected the court today. Talks are still underway with the Attorney General's Department. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
The We Help Ourselves Centre in the Allendale Hospital grounds is already having an impact on drug and alcohol addiction in the Hunter region. 150 people who have undergone detoxification for their addiction and want to learn how to live a drug-free lifestyle have done the program in the past year. The centre can accommodate 20 people at a time. However, strong demand from across the region has whose management keen to gain extra federal funding to expand the operation.
We're making ready to put those other rooms into use. We're holding our breath, hoping that we can attract some additional funding.
An expansion of the WHO's-style rehabilitation facilities was recommended by the state's Drugs Summit. The minister responsible for implementing the action plan, John Della Bosca, agrees more facilities are needed to help users kick their habit.
It's very important that they are serviced. Centres like Cessnock, the Hunter, are serviced by state-of-the-art facilities.
Today's opening doubled as the launch of a report by the National Council on Drugs. The Regional and Rural Consultation Forum has identified alcohol and cannabis as two substances in need of community and government attention.
In particular, they talk about the huge overuse and abuse of alcohol amongst young people in particular, and also the inroads that marijuana is making amongst their kids.
The report calls for a review of funding for drug and alcohol services and the use of the medical profession to improve the availability of advice. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Rated the best resort course in the state, Horizons was tested out by some of the world's best female professionals today. It's the first time many have even laid eyes on the course, including Australia's own Rachel Teskey. After a long Christmas break though, the 29-year-old can't wait to play tournament golf.
You can practice as much as you like, but playing is always a little bit different, just to kind of get into the tournament routine. And
having made her name on both the European and American tours, it's back home she hopes to make her mark this season, with the Australian Masters and Open her goals. Rachel finished runner-up in both over the last 2 years to Kari Webb.
And finishing second at both the Open and the Masters has been good for me, good for my confidence. So, yeah, I think it's time to go one better.
She's not the only one with that on her mind. English player Joanna Head will use this week to fine-tune her game to suit Aussie conditions.
I can't quite get the pace on the greens yet, but I think that's because I've been in London for 3 months.
And while the revamped $100,000 event is now the third richest on the Australian tour, if players can ace the 15th, they can also drive home in a new BMW.
It's quite a tough hole actually because the green's quite tight, so hopefully hit a good shot.
I don't know how you're going to get it home though.
I don't know how. I'm sure we'll find a way.
Newcastle's local area commander Ron Bender was back on the beat today. Under new reforms, it's a duty for even senior police. While he supports the changes, the superintendent says having him walking the streets is impractical.
And I try and keep in touch with what's happening at the coalface. To be rostered to work the truck would be very difficult because you would be tied up in arresting people, you'd be tied up in court, you'd be tied up in being the subject of complaints.
Under the restructure, 5 regional commands will be turned into 3. The Hunter is absorbed into the new North region, which stretches up to the border, with Newcastle as its base. Hunter Area Commander Terry Collins will be transferred to Wollongong, with the new region headed by Assistant Commissioner Peter Walsh.
There will be a number of people who are sitting in chairs at the moment behind desks. There'll be a reasonable number of those people who will be actually, shall we say, encouraged to come back into the operational theatre of policing.
Meantime, the Specialist Target Action Group and Anti-Theft Squad will be disbanded to free up police. Their past successes acknowledged.
The arrest of a great deal of people for amphetamines and drugs and the bikie gang has all been done at regional level by the regional resources that will now be coming back to the local area commands.
Closed 6 years ago amid fears the building may collapse, the future of surf houses hung in the balance. Recent interest in the mid-1930s structure has prompted Newcastle Council to again advertise for a white night to revitalise the complex.
We've had quite a few calls just before Christmas and after Christmas. The interest has built up more recently, so we've decided to go back to the market.
Council has already ruled out the possibility of an exclusive use or a fast food chain setting up on the site. The new occupier will have to comply with Council's plan of management for the area, which will ensure future public access. It's the second time in 3 years Council has gone to the private sector to save and reuse Surf House. Council can't afford the work, and the community has previously told civic leaders they would rather neighbouring facilities be improved. While some may favour demolition, the building is still structurally sound, leaving redevelopment as Council's preferred option.
There's definitely life in the building. We don't like to think too much about the demolition option, but it is one that Council's got to consider.
Expressions of interest close March 5. Gary Blair, NBN News. Gearing up to play the side he's labelled as the best United has played this season, you'd think Ian Crook would have enough on his plate this week. But as well as planning for the Olympic Sharks, it's next season the coach must also consider. The club has 13 players coming off contract. It's understood less than half will stay. Crook tells those players this week.
There isn't an easy week, to be honest with you.
While frustrated with the NSL's policy on player contracts, his club feels obligated to make decisions to help all involved.
Look, they're professional footballers. They know that, unfortunately, if they're told their services are no longer required at Newcastle United, well, in my view, the earlier we can indicate that, the earlier they can look for other opportunities.
United, meanwhile, is looking both within the NSL and overseas for new talent, but the club doesn't fear any backlash from supporters for letting others go.
I've said I'll have the best players. I don't mind where they come from, if they come from Uluru, wherever. If they're a good player and we think they can improve Newcastle United, then hopefully we'll be able to get them here, you know.
As for the side to play the third-place Sharks, Crook is still to decide if he'll reinstate Mark Wilson from the bench or use Michael Prentice in a match he rates as a real test of United's current standing.
We felt they were the best side that we've played. But you know, the league table doesn't lie.
The game is scheduled for Sunday night.
The Australian Women's Club Championships are pitting the best up-and-coming players against established stars. But for Americans Colette Glinkowski and Molly Smith, who play for the highly fancied Cronulla, the experience gained against Olympic gold medalists like Melissa Mills will hopefully help them break into their own national team. Although for Colette, it could just as easily be Australia.
Well, I came to Cronulla because it's my mom's hometown. She was born and raised, and she went to Cronulla High, so I thought I'd come back to family heritage and play for Cronulla. Come and also travel around the world. You know, I was in Perth last year, and now I'm on this side of the country.
The two players were both US squad members but missed selection for the Sydney Olympics, where America finished second to Australia. The pair say it's tough to break into the US team, which is predominantly made up of university players. 23-year-old Molly Smith says there's greater depth in Australian water polo, yet the atmosphere is more relaxed.
Too much pressure in the States when I was at uni because I was one of the main players, and here I can share the responsibilities with more people and take some of the pressure off myself.
The club championships finish on Sunday. Cullen Robinson, NBN News.
As much as we might hate getting caught up in the commercialism of Valentine's Day, it seems many of us just can't help it. And of course, a popular destination on the 14th of February is the local florist.
Yeah, the flowers go all right. Keeps them happy. That's what we're here for.
I got here at 6 o'clock and I had my first customer at 10 past 6, and it hasn't stopped.
At this shop alone, more than 1,000 orders were placed for today, requiring the services of more than 11 couriers, and that doesn't account for the last-minute rush expected tonight. Many took time out to select the right card and contribute to the $43 million expected to be generated in confectionery sales around the country. Then there were those that opted for a more expensive expression of love. Whatever the case, it seems few were forgotten today, and if you were just too busy to declare your love, don't forget there's always tonight. Helen Kapelos, NBN News.
The wanted man is aged in his late 20s, of medium height with crew-cut hair. Police today door-knocked homes near where 3 women and a girl were assaulted in Jesmond. 2 of the victims are foreign students at Newcastle University. The latest attack occurred here on a walkway along the Jesmond Link Road 3 weeks ago. A 25-year-old Asian woman was dragged into bushes behind the Heaton Primary School.
The victim on that occasion has given the offender her backpack and has managed to escape at that time.
On the same path, he overpowered a 19-year-old woman in June last year. A 23-year-old African student also assaulted on this path along Blue Gum Road in October. Both escaped without being raped. Last November, it's suspected the same man grabbed an 11-year-old girl walking home from school in nearby William Street.
On that occasion, the offender was seen by another member of the public and has run away.
Police are concerned that 3 of the attacks have been in public areas in broad daylight. The parents of students at a high school and 2 primary schools located just a street away from where the incidents took place have been or will be informed. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News. Wearing pig masks, 2 bandits stole into the Adamstown Liquorwire store just after 7 last night, one stumbling on a display. Both thieves are carrying chef's knives. One helps himself to cash in the till, while the other walks into a back room to confront a second attendant. He asks the man where the safe is, then makes him lead him to it. Money in hand, the bandits leave, and it's all over in less than a minute. Police suspect the pair are members of a gang responsible for a large number of robberies in the past 4 months.
We're looking at 1 or 2 core groups that are doing these robberies. Sometimes they go out in a group of 5, or they go out individually or as 2 or 3 people.
Bandits have targeted bottle shops, convenience outlets, video stores and petrol stations in Newcastle and Lake Macquarie. In one of the more serious hold-ups, 3 men struck at Hamilton's Encompass Credit Union last November. In the most recent robberies, thieves wore an array of cartoon party masks. While police have released the security video in the hope that someone may recognise one of the gang members, they're concerned that their growing notoriety will spur them on to commit more crimes.
They believe that it may be easy to carry out these offences. We're definitely targeting them with extra manpower and surveillance.
Vanessa Trezise, NBN News. While picturesque, Salts Bay is being eaten away by erosion. But volunteers from Landcare and the Trees Newcastle group are working to stabilise the area, one of many projects under a $6.8 million campaign to save Lake Macquarie.
We're just getting a review done by Southern Cross University, and the preliminary results show that we still do have major problems where we have urban development. In the middle of the lake itself, it's not too bad.
The Minister for Land and Water Conservation, John Aquilina, today thanked volunteers who are also trying to protect a rare rainforest nearby. Earlier, the Minister met with Lake Macquarie Council representatives who explained the need for future government funding to revive the magnificent waterway.
We really haven't started to negotiate in detail about extending this project by a further 3 years, but we are happy to provide an additional 12 months for the completion of the current work.
Meantime, public submissions for Lake Council's controversial local environment plan closed today. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
With the club announcing some time ago it was going to trim next season's playing roster, the writing was on the wall for some of the 13 players coming off contract. 2 of the bigger names told to look elsewhere, goalkeeper Brad Swancott and former Newcastle Breaker of the Year Todd McManus. Both started their NSL careers with Newcastle, but neither has played a top-grade game under coach Ian Crook. McManus had been linked to Marconi, but any move there was ruled out by Stallions coach Lee Sterry today. Joining them, looking for a new club, are mostly younger players, Chad Mansley, John Majerowski, Joel Grinnell and Talon Martin, with Anthony Surgeon to retire. It frees up around $285,000 for the club to re-sign players like Mark Wilson, Peter Sakanis, Joe Sharippa, Asala Massey, Michael Prentice and Mitchell Johnson, and at least 2 new players. On field, the team must now focus on Sunday's clash with the 3rd-placed Olympic. Former Shark Scott Bailey has plenty to play for against his old club.
Me and Ante Juric have got a small competition going on where who scores the most goals and who's on top of the ladder at the end of the season, so I'm in front on both counts at the moment.
The team trains tomorrow night with coach Ian Crook to settle on using either Michael Prentice or Mark Wilson from the bench.
Regarded around the world as aviation history, a tiger moth has an unmistakable presence. Yesterday at Horizons Golf Resort, a large gallery witnessed this grand old lady gracing the skies of Port Stephens, but that would be Alpha Juliet Golf's last flight.
The wing appeared to have folded up and then it just spiralled down to the ground.
As the plane plummeted to the earth, witnesses looked on helplessly.
Couldn't believe what was happening, but as soon as we sort of come to our senses and realised what was happening, it was made a phone call straight away. It was just watching it spiral down. It's something I won't forget.
The plane went down in thick bushland near the Williamtown RAAF base, making rescue efforts difficult. Officials from CASA and the Australian Transport Safety Bureau arrived today to begin their investigations into what caused yesterday's crash. Meanwhile, the names of the pilot and his passenger won't be released until a positive identification has been carried out. Circumstances surrounding the crash are not expected to be revealed for some time due to the condition of the wreckage. Stephen Mount, NBN News.
You could hardly get the winner's trophy out of Paula Marti's hands, but the ALPG Players' Champion gave it one last kiss goodbye until she returns to defend it next year.
Oh yes, I'll come back. And I'm going to come back maybe a week earlier just to have a holiday.
The incredible three-hole playoff win for the Spaniard over Queensland's Karen Pearce has boosted the 22-year-old ahead of the Australian Masters and the Open. It was actually her first tournament for almost 4 months, but she couldn't fault it or the result.
For being a small tournament, like for the first year that they started, it's been amazing. So I think if it's good this year, imagine what it's going to be in the years to come.
Organisers share the same feeling. Drawing big numbers over the 3 days, moves are already underway to make it a 72-hole event next year to confirm it as one of the country's leading pro tournaments.
We had a fantastic crowd, in excess of 15,000 over the 3 days. Talk of it now being extended to 4 days to include Sunday makes us very happy.
Horizons will host the New South Wales Men's Championship in November. Jim Callanan, NBN News. Right from the start, things didn't go well for Joel Griffiths. Taken down midway through the first half, he then got his own name in the referee's bad book. With that hanging over his head, the young striker pushed his luck a bit too far with this challenge in the second half. He copped not only an elbow but a second yellow card. The send-off, his second for the season, and now means a 2-week suspension, something his coach wants to fight.
I don't feel it justified a second card. Whether it'll get us anywhere, I don't know.
It soured what was a great start to the night for United, with Robbie Middleby drawing the worst out of Olympics defence. Griffiths stepped up to give Newcastle a 1-0 half-time lead. Olympics spoiled a number of chances to level after half-time, but Griffiths' send-off was the break they needed. With a 10-man defence stretched too far, in the 89th minute it cracked for Olympic to snatch a draw.
To hold them out for so long with 10 men and then to concede really late in the game was pretty hard to take.
Coach Ian Crook will now have to decide who'll join Asala Massey up front, with Daniel McBreen and Travis Dodd his two main options. It'll be another 2 versus 3 showdown, this time against a rampant Brisbane, which smashed Parramatta 4-1 at the weekend.
The first of the monster trucks were unloaded today, just hours after the Super Show was officially given the go-ahead from Lake Macquarie Council. Spears Point Park will be assessed prior to and after the show to monitor any damage. Organisers, the Showman's Guild, must also provide a bond, well above the usual amount of $2,200.
We felt that probably a bond of $100,000 would be adequate in the circumstances. It was somewhere between the $50,000 that was proposed plus the $140,000 as the maximum cost.
Organisers say coming up with the bond won't be a problem, but admit they were surprised at the amount.
I think this bond was mostly bigger than any bond anywhere else that's ever been held. I know we've done things in ANZ Stadium and that bond there is only $10,000 sort of thing.
Along with free admission, discount tickets are also available here at Spears Point, where you'll be able to purchase 8 rides for $25. But on the first day of the Newcastle show, there's the offer of unlimited rides for $29.
The hub of rides for the whole Southern Hemisphere. I mean, it's not a matter of competing. All these people are coming here because they want to be here.
It's now just over 1 week until the public can compare the stomach-churning rides. Both events start on the 1st of March. Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
It was business as usual at Electrical Lamp Manufacturing Australia today, but for how much longer, nobody knows.
All indications seem to be at this point that there will more than likely be a closure, although the company haven't made any official announcement at this point in time.
The company's light globes are sold under the well-known names of Philips, Osram and even the no-frills varieties, but all those could disappear from the shelves for cheaper imported globes from places like China, Indonesia and even Italy. Elmer, Australia's last globe manufacturer, has fought on bravely, offering a quality product in a market stacked against it since tariffs were relaxed in the 1970s. An ageing plant and cheaper labour costs from overseas have left many of the factory's 200 workers waiting for the inevitable axe to fall. The board has to now decide on whether to install a new $1 million furnace and remain operational, but the main concern of competing with much cheaper imports will never go away.
You can import a light globe for 11 cents from Indonesia, 36 cents it costs Elmer to make the same light globe, so it's very, very difficult.
Elmer employees should find out by the end of the week if the lights will finally go out on a 60-year-old Australian manufacturing tradition. Cullen Robinson, NBN News.
With Impulse long gone from the skies and Flight Centre taking a back seat, the Knights remain flying high with a new naming rights sponsor for the coming season. Australia's new regional carrier, QantasLink, joining the NRL Premiers on a one-year deal. The 20-man squad to play the Sharks will be bussed to Port Macquarie this weekend for the trial match. Some may need to take ID as a host of junior players join just a handful of regulars, with many of the big guns being rested.
Yeah, there's plenty of blokes there that I haven't had the chance to play football with. I'm a bit scared actually because some of them are that young that I've got 10 years on most of them.
Of the premiership winning side, just 5 will play this weekend, Matt Parsons being one of those, with a few other forwards to continue their roll on into the season proper.
I think it's mostly just the front rows and the big blokes that need a bit of extra football than everyone else. So we'll put our backs in cotton wool, mate. They're protected species, and we'll get out and play on the weekend.
As for some of the injured Knights, Tamana Tahu is expected to return for the following week at Cessnock for the clash against Penrith. Andrew Johns, though, no definite for that game with a leg muscle injury.
We're concerned about the possible damage that experience is causing those children and young people, and we're offering to provide accommodation and support to them in the Hunter Valley.
Hot on the trail of the alleged armed robbers, more than a dozen police converged on a private property at Edgeworth at 6:30 last night. 2 suspects had fled on foot into nearby bushland after being chased by a police motorcyclist at high speed from the Central Coast to Lake Macquarie. It's alleged an hour earlier the duo held up John's Pharmacy at Long Jetty armed with knives and wearing cartoon masks, one a Tassie devil. Heavily armed police boarded the Westpac helicopter to comb the scrub, a crowd of residents turning out to watch the drama unfold. The search was called off amid fading light, but the alleged robbers' luck ran out.
About 9:20 last night, an off-duty police officer saw the 2 men coming out of bushland just near Edgeworth McDonald's. Now, the 2 were seen to get into a taxi.
It's alleged police then contacted Newcastle Taxis and requested a global positioning system and security camera inside the cab be activated. Detectives then tracked the vehicle to the Pacific Highway at Charlestown, where it was stopped and 2 men arrested. They face court today, charged over the robbery. The lawyer for 25-year-old Jason Philip Watt of Maryville and 31-year-old Quinton Joshua Kidwell of Wallsend made no application for bail. Kidwell was also charged with robbing a Whitebridge chemist in January with a group of men wearing Batman masks. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
With talk of Newcastle's National League and soccer clubs merging, the players have already started sharing. Andrew Johns lent his boots to Robbie Middleby. It seemed a perfect fit as he supplied Asala Massey, who obliged with a brilliant finish. Massey's first goal since round 8. He almost had 2 in a row. Brisbane's shots on goal were rare in the first 45, but it was Newcastle that should have made more of its first half chances. After a slow start, the strikers began to find range. Matt McKay good, Beltrame better. Chances continued to come and go for Newcastle. Brisbane, though, must have wondered if it was ever going to break through Beltrame at the other end. The frustration spilled over as Travis Dodds got stuck in a nasty 2-on-1. With 7 minutes left, Brisbane finally got the breakthrough.